Cesare Borgia is one of the most well-known figures of the Italian Renaissance, and someone who immediately brings to mind cunning, ruthlessness, and political ambition. His infamous deeds even became the inspiration behind the classic The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli. He went from being a sort of Renaissance celebrity to one of the most reviled men in Italy in just a few years. It's even rumored that Cesare Borgia slept with his own sister, but according to her husband, the truth about him was even darker. Seeing as he would lead a very scandalous life, it is fitting that Cesare Borgia had a scandalous beginning. He was born in 1475 in the town of Subiaco, then part of the Papal States. He was the illegitimate son of Rodrigo Borgia, who was a Catholic cardinal, and his mistress, the married Venata de Catan. They would go on to have 4 children in total together. They were named Giovanni, Giuffre, Cesare, and Lucrezia. Rodrigo Borgia, who was originally born in Spain, was keen on climbing the ranks of the Catholic Church. To do this, he pretended his children were simply his nieces and nephews. For a man with so many secrets, it was no surprise that he would then bribe his way into becoming the Pope in 1492. Now that he was Pope Alexander VI, the power at his fingertips was immense. From his newfound position, he used his power to legitimize the children that he had with Venata de Catan. This was only the first step in what would end up being sheer nepotism. At 15 years old, his son Cesare Borgia was already a bishop in the Catholic Church. As soon as his father became pope, he made the now 18-year-old Cesare a cardinal. In 1497, Cesare's brother Giovanni was murdered. When they discovered the body, the 30 golden ducats which he had been carrying on him had not been taken, suggesting a personal motive. This development changed the destiny of Cesare, as he was now the eldest sibling in the family. Before, Cesare was being groomed for advancement within the clergy, but now things were different. In 1498, he would make history as the first person to resign his position as a cardinal. Little did people know, but it was done in order to make room for bigger things. Cesare had a powerful friend, the King of France, Louis XIII. One day after he quit his position as cardinal, King Louis made him a duke. He would now be known as the Duke of Valentinois. Cesare's father, the Pope, wanted him to marry someone with royal blood. He called in a favor with King Louis of France, who then set up Cesare with the sister of the King of Navarre, Charlotte of Albrecht. In 1499, Cesare and Charlotte were wed. Since the marriage was purely for political reasons, it's no surprise that things didn't go well. It also didn't help that Cesare had a voracious appetite for infidelity, and marriage would not stop his habit of having many affairs. During this time period, it was common practice for a newlywed couple to publicly consummate their marriage. Their first time together ended up being truly humiliating for Cesare. To help him complete the deed, he had asked an apothecary to provide him with something to ensure his flagpole was at full mass. Instead, whether or not it was intentional, the apothecary gave him a laxative. The night went as well as you can imagine. Nonetheless, Charlotte soon became pregnant. Things seemed to be going better when they went on their honeymoon, and he lavished her with many gifts. But oddly enough, soon after, Cesare simply left his wife in France and never saw her again. It's possible that in his mind his duty was done as they were married, and he had gotten her pregnant. Charlotte would later give birth to a daughter named Louise in the year 1500. But Cesare was long gone and never cared to see them ever again. He had too many political ambitions and other motivations on his mind. Meanwhile, the French king desired land in Italy, and up till now the Italian nobility and the papacy had resisted French advances. However, now that he had a border on his side, which was a great asset, when a French army invaded Milan, Cesare was there by its side. Additionally, Cesare also began capturing small cities all over Italy. The people in these towns didn't think much of the local vicars who had been ruling over them. As such, they were often ambivalent to being conquered by a Borgia, and in some cases even welcomed Cesare with open arms. This led to Cesare, with the backing of his father the Pope, as well as a French king running rampant all over Italy. Cesare, despite his cruelty and cunning ways, was nonetheless an incredibly intelligent and calculating leader. Despite not being able to rely on Louis XIV's men all the time, Cesare and his father the Pope devised a devious way to gain more land. They would create positions of power for noblemen to occupy, and it was often the case that the positions had to be bought into with gold. With the income generated from this, he would funnel the money to Cesare, who would hire condottieri, aka mercenaries, to do his bidding and conquer lands. The more power the Borgias created, the more enemies they made. They faced massive opposition from the Papal States, the territories of Italy, where the Pope had power. There were entire campaigns against them, and some of the claims were very out there. Many even claimed that Cesare was the real puppet master behind his father the Pope. They also claimed the lust and cruelty were the forces behind everything he did. We now think of Cesare Borgia as a ruthless, calculating, and cold-blooded man, but in the first years of the 16th century, he was basically their version of a rock star. Dashing, powerful, and brilliant, he definitely had an effect on people. After he established himself as a general, he even wore mostly black, adding to the mystique. After he captured Romagna and returned to Rome, he received a hero's greeting. Basking in the fame, he even participated in a bullfight and took out 7 bulls in a row. In 1502, Cesare Borgia won an unexpected ban. We now know him as a writer, but at the time, Niccolò Machiavelli was acting as a diplomat. After observing how he worked, Machiavelli recounted the violent methods that Cesare used to depose the ruling classes, particularly in Romagna, where he became duke. Machiavelli wrote about him with both reverence and fear. When the Borgia's siblings were young amid his father's political machinations, Cesare became very close with his sister Lucrezia, and somewhat of a protector figure. This dynamic would have effects later on. In one case, when their father was trying to marry off Lucrezia to a man for political reasons, Cesare intervened by warning the man about it. He then fled. In another instance, a rumor abounded that Lucrezia had become involved with a man named Pirato, and he had accidentally gotten her pregnant. This was problematic, as for Lucrezia to be married, she had to be a virgin. Cesare came up with a plan to solve the situation. When the baby was born, the Borgias introduced it as Cesare's own child from a liaison for his marriage. As well, darkly enough, Pirato's body was soon discovered floating in the Tiber. Many believed that Cesare had been behind this, and it wouldn't be the first time that he was accused of such transgressions. Another occasion involved Cesare, Lucrezia, and Lucrezia's second husband. Her new husband, Alfonso of Aragon, had been married to her for 2 years. Things had been fine until he eventually came on the wrong side of Cesare's political advances. An assassination attempt occurred and failed. While he was recovering, a mercenary entered his quarters and finished the job. The mercenary just so happened to be an old friend and confidant of Cesare. These incidents and rumors greatly darkened Cesare's reputation. Well before he had been known for his bravery and intelligence, people now considered him cruel and ruthless. However, it is unlikely that he cared much. With his father advancing in age, he continued on the path of acquiring as much power and land as possible, as once his papal connection was gone, he'd be on his own. As Cesare continued on his trail of conquests, he left a trail of enemies in his wake. A number of his own men grew to fear him and began a plot against him. Cesare, ever cunning and smart, found out about the plan. He reached out to them, and lying assured them he harbored no ill will. Pacified, the men continued conquering. Once inside a newly captured town, Cesare's own trusted forces encircled the plotters, and had them all garroted. Very few people trusted Cesare before this incident, but afterwards no one would. In 1503, during a sumptuous feast with the Pope, Cesare and one of their cardinals, all three of them, fell ill shortly after. Because of poisoning abounded his father, the Pope would perish. And when Cesare heard this, instead of responding in grief or shock, he immediately had his men sack the papal residence and take anything of value. With the Pope gone, Cesare's position was uncertain. The new Pope, however, supported him. This was good until the new Pope swiftly died. The Pope following him ended up being one of Cesare's worst enemies, Giuliano della Rovere. He would be named Pope Julius II. Pope Julius offered Cesare an olive branch and said he supported Cesare's continuing rule in Romagna. However, it was only a ruse. Within days he betrayed Cesare, and he was forced to flee Rome in a rage. Soon enough, though, he was captured and placed under arrest. The Pope demanded that he give up many of his castles and possessions. Cesare relented. As a result, he was allowed to travel to Ostia under supervision. Once again, Cesare attempted to flee and was promptly captured once more. This time, they decided that his punishment, he would be sent to his family's homeland, Spain. Once he arrived in Spain, instead of being welcomed as a returning hero, he would face an even harsher imprisonment. From his cell in a Spanish fortress, Cesare made a daring escape attempt. He somehow acquired a rope and decided to use it to clamber out of the tower he was imprisoned in. While he was lowering himself down, guards found him and cut the rope from above. Cesare fell to the ground and was badly injured, yet somehow he managed to escape, and Cesare was free for the first time in nearly 2 years. He now fled to one of the few allies he had left, his estranged wife's brother, King John III of Navarre. King John desperately needed help defending Navarre. Cesare quickly dusted off his armor and recaptured some of the regions that John had lost. Back in battle, it was here that he would finally meet his end. While laying siege to the town of Viana, he suddenly found himself alone and surrounded by enemy soldiers. Outnumbered, he could not fend them all off. They circled and stabbed him, killing him after many blows. Ironically, the men did not realize who they had just killed. It was only later, when the armor they had stolen from his body was identified, that they found out just who it was, the famous Cesare Borgia. After a life of plotting, fighting, vicious power grabs and betrayals, he was finally dead. King John would have a small mausoleum in Viana built for him. The inscription read, "Here lies in a little earth, he whom everyone feared." Even though Cesare was now dead, many of the enemies that he had made while living were alive and angry. The Aragonese desecrated his grave, destroyed the church in Viana where he was buried, and a local bishop demanded that his body be removed and buried on unconsecrated ground. His remains were removed and buried elsewhere. In 2007, nearly 500 years later, the remains were finally interred in the Church of Santa Maria. At the height of his power, when his father was Pope, Cesare Borgia was known to have very debauched parties at the Vatican, where guests were encouraged to participate in very depraved rituals. The Banquet of the Chestnuts was a regular event where chestnuts would be scattered on the ground, and courtesans would gather them with their mouths. Strangely, Cesare would watch the festivities with his father and his sister Lucrezia. From the time they were little and into adulthood, Cesare and his sister Lucrezia were very close. Many rumors surrounded their relationship, and many thought that it was Cesare who had 2 of her former partners murdered. They also whispered that Cesare and Lucrezia were sleeping together. Although there is not actually proven evidence of this, the rumors have persisted for centuries. Another dark allegation, one even worse than the idea that he was sleeping with his own sister, is about his older brother Giovanni. Cesare Borgia, their younger brother, was married to Sanchia of Aragon. It was rumored that she was having an affair with not only Giovanni, but Cesare as well. Allegedly, Cesare had killed Giovanni in a jealous rage. Whether or not this is true, it is possible we will never know. To this day, Cesare Borgia remains a complex and polarizing figure. His ambition, ruthlessness, and cunning make him one of the most notable people of the Italian Renaissance. His rise to power under the shadow of his father, the powerful Pope Alexander VI, and his relentless quest to consolidate authority in Italy, illustrate his political shrewdness and moral ambiguity. Machiavelli's depiction of him in The Prince immortalizes Cesare's legacy as a ruler willing to do whatever it takes to achieve power. Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Also, don't forget to visit our main page, Factinae, for more incredible facts about